Everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. I know there's a fair amount of people online, so if you are at home, hello. I also saw that a young Lillian Johnson is joining us today. I hope you really enjoyed this presentation. I am Betsy Strail. I'm a student in the EER program here. I also serve as the student program seminar exchange representative. So our student here today, Makayla, is actually a graduate student from Clemson University. She is our second of the school year that is visiting us. So just for a little context about Makayla, Makayla Headley is currently a second-year PhD student in the Engineering and Science Education Department at Clemson University. She holds a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where she graduated from before gaining experience as a process engineer at Northrop Grumman's Advanced Technology Laboratory. Her research focuses on ABET accreditation, historically Black colleges and universities, specifically the HBCU engineering programs, with a special dedication to improving the experiences of Black students within engineering. So without further ado, let's go ahead and welcome Miss Makayla.
Thank you. Okay. Hi, can everyone hear me? Good. Can everyone see me online and everything? Okay. Perfect. I think we said I'll stay on here. Okay, so like she said, hi everyone, my name is Makayla, and today I'll be talking about illuminating the disparities of ABET accreditation at historically Black colleges and universities, also known as HBCUs, so I'll be using that acronym a lot, while telling you about how I developed my graduate student identity along the way. So just a brief overview about what I'll be talking about. I'm going to go through my journey, give you a little bit of context, positionality, I think it's really important, introduction, the methods of the study, some results and discussion, and then future direction where I see myself going. So how did I get here? Our postdoc in our department, Dr. Katrina Thomas, always says that there's a story in everything, and I truly believe that. And I think it's pretty fitting to tell you about my story, to give you a little bit of context, because it's really what driving where I am today and the research that I'm doing. So this is little old me, a chemical engineering student in undergrad. I Googled a picture of a stressed student, and this is what they gave me. College was, getting an engineering degree was challenging. There was a lot, just many factors, a new environment, transition from high school, the environment, and everything like that. I just had a hard time. My classes were challenging. But then I took a kinetics course that was kind of this like transformative and defining experience for me. This class was like no other class I had ever taken in my engineering curriculum. So I was truly concerned. I was just curious what was so different about this class. So I went to my instructor and I asked him, how did you design the course? Because I actually was able to see the relationship between the course content and then on the exams and homeworks and just the implications of the course content. So my instructor said, oh, I use ABET. And I was like, most undergraduate students or people, what is ABET? He didn't really tell me, but he just said that these are outcomes that they have, and I demonstrate them by putting it on this exam question, this homework, yada, yada, yada. So from there, I kind of started asking questions about curriculum design, and I was just curious about how courses and curriculum operates. And at my home institution, I was a Meyerhoff Scholar. So at that point, I knew I wanted to go to grad school. That was a part of my pathway always, but there was no true passion or commitment. I was like, okay, I like transport. I like the biomedical things that I'm doing. I also like chemical reactions. I can do whatever. But through Meyerhoff, other graduate schools come and visit, and we learn about other graduate programs. And specifically, Dr. Brooke Brahaney from FIU came to talk about their engineering education program. And, I took the pamphlet, the information, and I just thought, okay, this is cool. Nothing about it. It wasn't until later when I started asking more questions and I realized, oh, engineering ed. There are people out here doing the curriculum design and making changes for students to experience engineering better. And that's what I want to do. So I graduated from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, woohoo, in engineering, in chemical engineering. And like she mentioned, I am currently a PhD student in the Engineering and Science Education Department. So I don't know about most graduate students, but after figuring out, okay, this is what I'm going to do, I came into my program as a first year like, okay, I'm going to research this. My dissertation topic, I already have it. I'm going to be in and out, no problem. I did a chemical engineering undergraduate degree. And then I was lost. It was it was an interesting experience because I felt like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, but once I started taking courses and learning about all the things of engineering education, I realized by learning stuff, I learned what I did not know. And I also learned that a lot of the questions that I had or what I wanted to do, there's already plenty of literature out there on it. So I didn't know, I felt like I didn't have any direction where I wanted to go. And I kind of felt like behind because other people in my cohorts were moving towards the next milestone and I was still very up in the air, not certain. But then a common trend is I kept asking questions. I started to just ask questions, and a lot of the questions kind of revolved around this stigma between an engineering degree from an HBCU, historically black college, university, and a PWI, a predominantly white institution. So I was just asking, like, what are the different experiences? There's this like negative connotation that goes along with HBCUs. Their degrees and their institutions are commonly discredited. And I was just curious, just asking those questions. So when I Google these questions, they're not really there. The answers aren't there. So I had to go answer these questions. So in the context of education research, I think it's important to state my positionality because it's a part of our research. As much as we want to deny it, we have biases within us that affect the research that we do. So I am a black woman, and before I moved to South Carolina, I would not directly state that my parents are foreigners, but I think it's important to include here that I come from a Caribbean descent because I learned moving to South Carolina that my experiences are different from students in the South who grew up with African American parents, and that shapes our identities a lot differently. So I'm also an engineer. I put in the blood, sweat, and tears. I'm an engineer. I worked as an engineer for a little while. I realized that wasn't it for me. And I would say that PWI is not traditionally a part of my identity and my positionality, but in the context of this study, I think it's important to mention that I attended a PWI for my undergraduate degree, and I am currently pursuing my graduate degree at a PWI. So while I was at these institutions, I participated in a lot of organizations like the National Society of Black Engineers, the Black Graduate Student Association, and Black Student Union. And through these organizations, I started to develop a passion and a commitment for Black students' experiences and building connections with students at HBCUs. And through my own personal experiences as being a Black woman in a male, white, hetero-dominant field, and the experiences of my peers, I kind of started asking questions and became motivated in this relationship and pursuing this study. So I was motivated to do this study by understanding and recognizing the invaluable contributions that HBCUs have to graduating a number of Black students. HBCUs are responsible for preparing Black students in STEM for the challenges they may face in the future and diversifying the STEM workforce. And I think it's important to notice the contributions that they make to diversifying the STEM workforce, and that's why we should continue to work on developing and growing and researching these spaces for students as we continue to diversify the STEM workforce. So in this study, I I address the accreditation gaps and explore the factors hindering full accreditations at HBCUs. There is currently a 66% gap of HBCUs that aren't accredited. Oh, man. Oops. Okay. So I know I mentioned before ABET. How many people know what ABET is? That is great. That's so great. The average person does not. So ABET is the Accreditation Board for Engineering and Technology. It was founded as the Council of Engineering Professional Development in 1932, and their whole thing is quality assurance of engineering for colleges and programs and universities. So in order for me to understand ABET and how it operates and what it is, I created this diagram, and I hope going through this diagram, it will help you understand the relationship as well. So ABET is a nonprofit organization, and the gist of it is the accreditation part. There's obviously the financial, marketing, all that piece, but we're not worried about that. So the first level are the people that make up this accreditation commission. So that is the professional societies like AICHE, IEEE, ECE, all the E's that they are, engineering professors, and then industry partners that weigh in and make this accreditation commissioners. So these accreditation commissioners come together every July, and they decide the ABET criteria. They write down, and in engineering, there are 8 ABET criteria. Criteria 1 is student outcomes. That's the main one. Criteria 3 is student outcomes. And then from this ABET criteria, they distribute it to the different engineering programs and departments. And within faculty, the institutions decide and plan how they're going to implement the ABET criteria. And this is commonly demonstrated and given to students through assessments like homeworks, projects, and exams. But there is also this feedback loop here where the engineering programs and faculty have to then take those same assessments and present them to the accreditation commissioners to demonstrate that they satisfy these ABET criteria for a continual accreditation or renewal. So a little bit more background. So HBCUs make up a small percentage of institutions in higher education, but yet they are still very important. They are a key role in the presence of Black students in STEM disciplines. 30% of Black engineers are in the workforce graduated from HBCUs, and 46% of them are Black women with STEM majors. So I think it's very important. Like, we need to continue to look at and further investigate the accreditation and engineering programs at these institutions. So a taxonomy report identified 15 HBCUs that are fully accredited here. You may be familiar with some of the bigger schools and noticeable names, but for even more context and background, I'm going to throw some numbers at you. So there are 363 accredited engineering programs in the nation. And remember, as I previously said, HBCUs graduate 30% of all Black engineers in the workforce. And they are responsible for 4% of the accredited institutions in the nation. And there are still only 5% of all engineers that are Black in the nation. So what does that tell us? To me, I feel like HBCUs are putting in the work, and I also feel like there's still a lot more work to be done. So, to illuminate these disparities in ABET accreditation, I leveraged the theory of racialized organizations to explain these disparities amongst HBCUs accreditations. And I want to mention that this work was done in collaboration with another graduate student, Stephanie Damas, who helped me understand and explain the theory of racialized organizations for the theoretical framework of this study. Ray defines the theory of racialized organizations as constituting and being constituted by racial processes that may shape, the policies of racial, state, and individual prejudice. So the theory of racialized organization can be observed at the macro level, the meso level, and the micro level. So at the macro level, we look at HBCU's institutions and how they sustain and operate the institution. So these are the provost, the president, the advisory board, all those people. And then at the meso level, we look at those that the stakeholders within that are reliant on ABET accreditation, which are the faculty, the deans, the admins of the engineering departments. And then at the micro level, we look at the students and their learning experiences and interactions with ABET accreditation. Since this study was to identify the disparities in HBCU accreditation, a theory that considers the foundational and historical context of institutions that serve specific races is appropriate. The theory of racialized organizations have 4 tenets: access to agency. So this is it can either enhance or diminish the access that to organizations and different resources. Distribution of resources, a common example, not common, but an example is that HBCUs have been unequitable resources. Millions are owed to them in funds. And credential of whiteness, this is the sense that white is property and it's a norm. And an example of this, like I mentioned before about ABET, the professional societies that make up the accreditation board, in that professional society, it does not consist any minority serving professional societies like NSBE, SHIP, or SWE. And decoupling of rules. So decoupling of rules is what are the actual rules and how are they being practices and the differences between what's being said and what's being done. So the 2, access to agency and decoupling of rules, is something we hope to implement and explore and for further investigation in this study. So now methods. So like I said, I was asking a lot of questions. I wanted to know about all the HBCUs and their engineering programs and accreditations. So I used IPEDS, NSF, at NASA, and engineering by the numbers to help me create a database, because a lot of the data that was out there included information, but it didn't have everything that I wanted. So I kind of compiled it for myself. So I created a spreadsheet that included the institution's names, its location. I also learned about institutions being public versus private versus profit and for not-profit. If they offered an engineering program or a department, what majors the institution offers in engineering, and then what majors are actually accredited. So from this list, I compiled 101 HBCUs in the nation. From this list, I excluded all medical schools, theological schools, and community colleges, and was able to narrow it down to 82 4-year degree granting HBCUs in total. So from here, I used ABET's search tool to cross-reference the engineering programs that was provided at each institutions to compare and see if it was accredited by ABET. I want to point out that this is a great tool that ABET has available on their website. Their website is full of information. But on the search tool, it does not specify specific details on the dates of accreditations. So this means it will say the date will have the initial date a program was accredited, and then its most recent date of accreditation. But on the website, it does not give detail to if the program lost accreditation, was on probation for accreditation. That's probably something you'd have to investigate further, or investigate further at the institution. So from this data analysis, I was able to categorize 3 main findings of the different types of engineering programs at HBCUs. So there are fully accredited programs, partially accredited, and no programs accredited. And let me explain what that means. So based on my database, I list the majors that the institution offered and compared it to ABET. If it's fully accredited, that means every single program that the institution offers is also accredited by ABET. Partially accredited means either one or two programs are not accredited according to ABET's database, and no programs accredited. It means the institution offers these programs and they're not accredited at all by ABET. I also want to point out that in this study, I noticed and found that a lot of the programs that were either partially accredited or not accredited at all were computer science programs. And I included computer science within engineering, within the realm of it. And this was a great finding because computer science does not have the same requirement as engineering to be accredited, which is very interesting to me. So this was why there was a bit of a disparity in those programs. So in total, out of the 82 HBCUs, there are 54 programs that offer engineering programs. So also, when the taxonomy report identified 15 and we were able to identify 23 fully accredited, this disparity in numbers can be attested to including computer science programs. And also, another thing from this study, I found that HBCUs offer engineering programs through dual degree engineering programs. So dual degree engineering programs are partnerships between HBCUs and other institutions who have engineering programs. So the students would spend their first 3 years at their home HBCU, and then they transfer and finish their engineering courses at the partnering institution. So that's why we had more numbers than the report. Partially accredited were 18% and 13% that were not accredited. So at the macro level, we identified that accreditation may not be readily accessible to all institutions with engineering programs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the process of ABET accreditation, but it takes a lot of work and hands-on. And if HBCUs who are having a hard time sustaining the institution as it is, it may be a lot. It's not as accessible for them to include this other component, which also speaks to the meso level of limited faculty. They not have the staff and faculty to prepare the documents and material, and also the funds required to be accredited. And then at the micro level, this is a disadvantage for students who want to be in engineering but attend institutions who are not accredited, because the minimum requirement for an engineering job is to have an accredited degree. A limitation of this study is that although we did not get to specifically investigate the institutions and talk to the people there to understand how these tenets of theory of racialized organizations were observed at the institution and specific examples, that is something that I'd like to look at in detail for future studies. So my future direction, this study was really a baseline for me. It was a great way to start asking questions, and it really started to get my mind spinning and thinking about where I wanted my research to go. I learned a lot during this process, and it opened my eyes to many different aspects of the engineering education space. The first thing I want to point out is HBCU dual degree engineering programs. There's a lot, well, actually there isn't. There's limited information or research done on HBCUs to begin with, and to look at the specific population of dual degree engineering programs, there is limited information on that as well. So I'm interested in exploring the experiences of those who participated in HBCU dual degree engineering programs. A really good example of this partnership is the Atlanta University Center with Georgia Tech, the AUC. They have other partners now, but they have been successful with their dual degree engineering program for about 50 years now. And I wrote a literature review on the HBCU dual degree engineering programs with Dr. Trina Fletcher to help give me some more information and background about this realm. So I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I have a little obsession with ABET, and I learned a lot about ABET. And I think it's very interesting that there is no literature out there on ABET aside from ABET's website or information from faculty reporting how they implemented ABET student outcomes or how they successfully implemented their ABET criteria, whatever the case may be. There's not a lot about the process of accreditation or just some more transparency or details. And I also think it's very interesting that ABET is a great organization. It's a large organization, but the people that does the review, the thousands of people that go to institutions and review the material are all volunteers. None of those people are paid, and that's surprising to me. They must really love what they do. And then overall, I think my research group, we look at students' experiences, and I think this is really where I can focus as a graduate student. Are the student experiences at all these levels? So the student experiences at HBCU dual degree engineering programs, students' experiences with ABET. ABET is a really big stakeholder in engineering students' careers and their education, but the majority of students don't even know what ABET is. So I think that's interesting, and I would be curious to know students' value or perceptions of ABET. So yeah. So where am I going? We're on this journey, and to finish up my story, I will be doing an internship with ABET. So all the questions and concerns that I had, I'll be answering them. I'll be looking at the specific details. I'll be right there, hands-on in ABET, figuring out how to help them, because ABET understands and knows that when institutions or faculty hear ABET, people like to run. They're kind of scared of the name ABET, and they don't want it to be this. ABET wants faculty and institutions to know that this is a relationship and ABET is here to help. They want this quality assurance and consistency across the nation. Well, internationally, because ABET is an international organization now. And I'm also looking for a dissertation topic. I have all these ideas and potential outlets of where I want to do my research, but narrowing it down to finally figure out where I want to go in my further research. And yeah, so I recently went through the first milestone of my program. So narrowing down a dissertation topic to propose and become a PhD candidate. Yeah, so I just want to say thank you to everyone. I want to thank God for helping me get to where I am today, because without it, I wouldn't be here. My research program, my research group, Elevating STEM Student Outlooks, they are so supportive and helpful in everything that I do. And my advisor, Lisa Benson, thank you. Any questions?
You keep it. Don't worry. That's why we have two.
Should I turn it off?
No, keep it on for you to answer questions.
Oh, true.
Okay, everybody. If we have questions in the room, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and I will bring the mic around. If you are online and you would like to ask questions, if you are not comfortable coming off mic, you can put them directly in the chat, and I will read them. If you are comfortable coming off mute, you can raise your hand, and Isabel and I will moderate it together. So I'll go with Robin first.
Thank you so much for this. So I don't know very much about ABET, but I know that U of M has a couple of programs that have decided not to pursue accreditation. And I wondered whether your assumption is that the HBCUs that are not accredited have always been denied that, as opposed to making that choice, or where is their agency in that space?
I think in that space, I think a big thing hindering it is funds, financial funds. It costs a lot to be to just get the accreditation, and then it costs a lot to have the people to do the work of accreditation. So this is another thing that I'm interested in for those programs that the question to ask is, what value added is there of being ABET accredited versus not ABET accredited?
There's one in the chat, so I'll go online and then I'll come back to you. Oh, I'm going to very quickly read a comment. Linda Clark would like to say outstanding, both the flow and the content of your presentation and your scholarship that underlies it. So just thank you to thank you from Linda, and then I will go over here. More questions in the room? We're sorting that out right now, so we're going to go to Viv.
Hey, Makayla. I really enjoyed your talk, and I also feel like I learned a lot about ABET, which I know next to nothing about. But I was curious, like in your literature review, like if you found, just as you were learning more about ABET, like I'm curious, is there any like industry perspectives that are like kind of incorporated into their, like, I know professional societies are like part of ABET, but I'm curious if any like direct industry like feedback is incorporated into these, and if you like have any information about that.
Yeah. So in my diagram, industry, how I understand it, industry does have a say in like helping create the criteria. So they're like, we need engineering graduates to be able to work in interdisciplinary teams. This is what we want to see. And ABET incorporated that over the past years and different things like that. So I don't know this. There are industry partners in, I don't know the specific names, but they do have partners within their accreditation board, commissioners board.
Works. Okay. The research that I've seen about ABET accreditation up to date has often been evaluating like the effectiveness of the standards and how to really measure the standards. Do you feel like with this additional dimension of looking about how ABET accreditation occurs in HBCUs and other minority serving institutions, if there is some kind of racialized element and or disparities present specifically in how the evaluation might differ between that and a PWI?
Yes, I think due to the nature of our society, there are biases and unknown biases, and that's something that I would like to look at in the last tenet of the theory of racialized organization in further detail, while talking to the institutions in specific of like what their experiences are to the when they're like being audited, and because these are potential things of how someone you can have like I met with Nancy today, and she gave a great example when we were talking about this. When you're getting audited, it could be like a really nice person auditing you, and it's like, oh, just give me the material, I'll go through it. Or it can be someone who's not really nice, and we don't really know what these experiences are. And I am interested in knowing exactly what the experiences are. And our country has a history of having negative experiences with HBCUs and Black experiences to begin with. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is some biases there.
We have two questions online, so I'm going to read one aloud. Oh, and then we have a couple people raising hands. So we're going to start with the one that's in the chat from Lucero Lopez. I'm going to read the whole thing so you get the context. Okay. Hello, Makayla. I'm curious about the ramifications of attaining a degree without ABET accreditation. During my undergraduate experience, I found out that one of the programs was not accredited and led to many students switching out of the major. I didn't understand why at the time, but I was told later many entry-level jobs posted specify that they have to be from an ABET accredited institution as well as internships. Do you have any thoughts about that, or if it's an interest in your research about how it may affect the advancements of Black engineers in the industry?
Thank you. That was a great question. Yes, that is a minimum requirement for engineers to have an accredited degree. And I thought this was interesting in the findings when I saw that the majority of computer science program, even though this is a new field, like it's a new upcoming field, that they aren't accredited, that they don't require this accreditation in the field. ABET actually has a partnership, and I don't know the exact name, with a computer science. They're helping develop a computer science accreditation to implement this. But in in shorthand, the computer science, why an accreditation isn't required is kind of like we'll teach you in the field or you'll learn it in the workspace or something as long you get the foundations in your coursework. That's what I've seen so far in the literature. That's something I would definitely like to look at and explore in more detail for students who don't have those opportunities to go to schools with accreditations. And yeah.
Thank you. So next, let's go to Erin and Lillian Johnson.
Oh, Lily, how did I do? What was my grade?
What did you think of the talk, Lillian? She says A minus, but she doesn't know about ABET, so that might influence it. Anyway, my question. Thank you very much for the talk. My question was about. I think like Betsy's question was great about like the evaluators and who they are and like what type of microaggression or training. I think it builds off of that is how are these evaluators trained. I think another related question is sort of like the student outcomes themselves, and there's been a lot of conversation about them, but like, do they, ABET writes those student outcomes to like capture experiences that all students should have, but like, how much are those based on like a, traditional white male global north perspective? And like, are those student outcomes capturing everything that diverse students bring to engineering and can do with engineering? So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think my biggest comment to that about students, I think students should be a part of it. Helping students write and define their curriculum. Students are very much out of this loop. I write it as a hierarchy. Like I described it as a hierarchy where students are at the end of the table or at the barrel just being thrown and with no explanation. But I think students they should have a say in their education and what they want in the future. It should be a part of it and could help develop and describe it. So I agree.
Okay, we have 2 more questions in the chat. I'll go to Eileen Johnson next.
Hi, no affiliation actually with Erin Johnson. But that was a really great talk. I found it really interesting, and I found it also really interesting that a lot of the data you said you had to kind of collect from all over and then assemble into one like big data sheet. And so I guess I was wondering like what kind of sources then did you have to go through, and then do you like I guess have recommendations for how something like that could be made easier, like determining actual numbers of things? Because I feel like that's something that would be important to look at, and then I can't find too much information on the ABET website. So I was just wondering. It seems like there's not too much,
Yeah.
right there for you.
Oh, yeah. So I want to say I use iPads, which is something post-secondary. It's a big database. I use NSF collects data, ASE engineering by the numbers. So they have a lot of information, but the challenge is that I was looking at HBCUs and no research, there's limited research on HBCUs. So I had to kind of sparse out of these large databases, the specific institutions that I was looking at. Maybe you were asking about on the
Yeah,
ABET's
and I guess
website.
that's part of it is like if maybe that should be something
Maybe
I
in
don't know
their
because I
like
know you said you were
search.
doing an internship, but yeah, like it's like a filter or something. Yeah, you
Right,
could
yeah.
suggest that. I don't know.
Yeah, on their search tool. I know they have like by program and different options, but maybe we can be even more specific as public, private, MSIs.
Yeah, and then especially considering that, yeah, just you get it.
I will put a note in. Yeah.
Okay, next we're going to go online to Dr. Cindy Finelli, and then we'll come back.
Hi, Makayla. Thanks so much. It was really a fabulous presentation. You did a great job.
Thank you.
More than a question, I guess I have some thoughts about future research directions. I think there's just so much insight to gain about ABET in lots of future directions. But I think you could, like, explore questions like how and why HBCUs might or might not pursue ABET. Maybe you could look at the value to the students, to the institution, the influence the students' parents have on their decisions, and the importance of ABET to them. But I think there's just so much rich data that no one has been collecting about ABET. You could do like a lot of investigations with faculty involved, administrators, students, to really dig in and learn about the process. So basically, I think you have a really rich set of possible directions to pursue that could involve lots of qualitative data collection and quantitative. So great work. Keep it up. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Thank you.
Okay, just want to make sure it was on first. All right, thanks, Makayla. This was really interesting. I want to give some context before my question. So one of my studies in my dissertation is focusing on, I guess, from when you were looking at more higher level, like HBCU level, like institution level, and like what programs are accredited. For one of my dissertation studies, looking specifically within one engineering field, mechanical engineering, looking at what do students perceive to be like essentially the emphasized skills and knowledge, or I guess essentially like what things they're learning in their engineering classes within mechanical engineering, and then how that aligns with why they pursued engineering and like what they find interesting about engineering and why they decide to like persist and stay, and then how that might affect their career intentions. And so I guess my question, even though it's not directly related to HBCUs, but if you, I guess maybe there's just so much still limited information about ABET itself, of like how, other than maybe anecdotally and word of mouth, I guess, from how people do their evaluations, but like, did you also see, or do you, I guess, would you be maybe interested also in pursuing like of how the degree to which like certain ABET outcomes might be, you know, I guess overemphasized over others? Because I think there's some ABET outcomes, for instance, one of them that focuses more on like the social, cultural, global dimensions of engineering work that I would argue isn't focused on as much compared to like problem solving and being able to, you know, do data analysis and theory. So I was just wondering if you happen to find any literature related to that, and if not, if that's something also that you're interested in as well.
No, I have not seen any specific literature into that, and I haven't even really thought about that specifically. So that's a great point that you brought up. I know that I paid attention to the student outcomes, that aspect of it, but that's just one of the criteria. They have other criteria like faculty and the courses, the programs itself, and different things like that. But that is definitely something that I could be interested in. Thank you.
I'll just go to you who has one.
Thanks for meeting with me earlier today. And amen to students participating in their own curriculum. So good job on that point. I was wondering if you had any information about the demographics of the evaluators, these so-called volunteers, and what if there is no data. I think that's pretty critical to your ability to analyze the, you know, I can't say the acronym, HBCU, in the context that you may not have data when you intern. I'm going to say maybe really take a good look at who's amongst you so that you can see. I think it's really important when you walk into a room to see who's actually there. So do you have any data on the demographics?
I do not have data on the demographics of the evaluators. I don't think the evaluators' names are listed, but all of the people that make up the commissioner boards or the representatives of the professional societies of the accreditation commission, their names are there. So I could go through and get the demographics myself for that, but I will be at the evaluation trainings that are happening this year. So that is something I will keep in mind. And I think it's something I do naturally.
We probably have maybe 1 to 2 questions left, and then we're going to
Is it on? Okay. I just quickly, like, it's a thought that popped up into my head, but I love that you're using or thinking about, you know, continuing to use theory of racialized organizations, because the conversation like around ABET kind of like made me think about how a lot of these kind of like bar exams, for example, where like they have very racist origins, whether intentionally or unintentionally, they end up excluding a lot of different populations. So I think like it's very interesting to kind of look at it from that racialized lens to see like what is happening and like not just a historical analysis but also that like race analysis. So I really appreciate that you're using that theory.
Thank you.
I am going to change the topic a little bit. I'm really curious about your internship with ABET. Do you know what you're going to be doing, or like, can you talk a little bit about it? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So it's not fully fleshed out, but for the main part, I was invited to attend the symposium that they're having, like he mentioned, in Tampa. They have evaluators training, so the thousands of people that go around, I'll be participating in that. And I remember the first time I heard about ABET, or I went to an ABET talk at a conference, and they were like, "Oh, you can be an evaluator." I was like, "Okay, how do I sign up?" And they were like, "Oh, graduate first." And I was just like, "Why do I need to graduate first?" But so I'll be there, just going along with the trainings. I'll also be at the commissioners meeting in July, and then I will be going on some of the evaluation site visits. So that will be very interesting experience.
Your advisor, Dr. Lisa Benson, also added in the chat that Makayla applied for funding for the ABET internship through the NSF intern program. So that is also helpful information. And our last question for today, just due to time, will be Linda Clark.
Linda, you're mute.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. Clearly, you want to make the most of your time with ABET, and so some of what I'm going to ask you might need to be deferred, but I'm hoping not. I'm wondering if through ABET you could find any resources that they're already collecting about math preparation. My observation throughout my career working with undergrad and graduate students in engineering programs is that time to degree and success in a program often relates to the quality of the math education with which they enter. And students who do not have the opportunity to take AP math in high school, for example, no matter how smart and capable they would have been of doing it, just typically have to spend longer or take more courses to be successful in engineering. And so I'm wondering if there might be racialized or under-resourced issues that are convoluted with HBCUs as well as non-HBCU institutions and high schools and the like. So that's sort of a question. I hope you understand it.
Yes.
Second question would be to time. Do you get it? I'll pause right there. Do you want to ask me anything to clarify
okay.
that, or
Yeah,
do you
because
get
that's
that question?
Yeah, that's an easy answer. So ABET told me that they do not collect data about that at all. They do not collect data on the institutions or any trends or anything like that whatsoever. Any data trends like that will be within the institution themselves.
Okay, well, and then my comment about make the most use of ABET means you might have to defer that. But to me, in engineering education, that's a big issue. I'll just get off my soapbox and put that out there. And the final comment would be, I'm impressed by what you said at the beginning about how the pedagogy of the professor helped you find your way and how that was traced back to ABET. And I'm wondering if there's any thread of that you could pursue and if you've thought about that.
Yes. So from that relationship, I think I've been looking at students' experiences with assessments, and my research group does a lot of motivation and future time perspective work, and looking at the relationship between students' value of present task and their future. And for that student-teacher relationship, I was wondering if instructors were transparent to their students about why they're doing what they're doing and giving them these specific assessments, if that will translate or present or create any type of value for students in their future careers or anything.
That sounds like a nice research question to pursue. Thank you for listening to my slightly long-winded question, for which you had a very short answer that was not what I was hoping for.
All right, everyone. I was just going to say, because we are at time, I know there were more questions and comments that were wanting to be said, and I would just recommend you all email Makayla right here. Her email is on screen. But other than that, let's give a final round of applause for Makayla Headley. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And with that, we're going to wrap up today. So everyone in the room, feel free to take some snacks. Other than that, oh yeah, make sure to sign in. Please do. And then folks online, we hope you have a great rest of your day. And I think this is actually our last seminar of the semester. So thank you, Makayla, for wrapping us up this semester. Really awesome. Okay. Have a great day, everybody.
Makayla.
Ooh.